Hello and welcome to Heartlight Vedic Astrology. In this talk I was going to discuss the concept of planetary directional strength, or Bala, as it's discussed in its significance in Vedic Astrology, or Jyotish. So let's get started. Okay, so let's talk about this now. What is Bala? Bala literally translates to directional strength in Sanskrit. And what Bala means, or significance in Vedic astrology or Jyotish, is that it's an indication that the planet's condition is strong. And then what that means is that whatever results that planet's supposed to deliver in somebody's chart, whether it's good or bad, are going to be strong. And I'm going to, as I go through this concept of Bala, I do talk about different houses of the chart and that sort of thing. If you're not familiar with the basic format of a North Indian style chart, or you don't know the houses, I would check out my other teaching videos first, which is different Indian style charts, and also an intro to chart navigation. That'll help you make more sense of this. So in any case, the first idea is that each chart has a direction and time association with the different areas of a chart. So in a North Indian style chart, this top diamond square here is called the Lagna, the ascendant, the rising sign. It's also the first house, or bhava. And that house is related to the direction of east, and time-wise it's about 6 a.m. The rising sign is the sign or constellation that's literally rising the east as somebody's born. Okay. So also with the east, we associate the sun rising there, which is about 6 a.m. Yeah. So that's the first house and the direction it's and time it's associated with. Then if we move over to the left here, we have the fourth house, or fourth bhava, which represents north, or midnight, literally the middle of the night. Okay, so darkness. Then if we move down to the seventh house, or seventh bhava, this area of the charts are related to the direction of west, or 6 p.m. Right? So if the east is 6 a.m., the west is 6 p.m. So when the sun might be setting, for example, depending when and where you are in the world. Yeah, but generally about 6 p.m. for most of us, I guess. And then most times of the year. And then if you move to the very right of the chart, this is the 10th house, 10th bhava. It's associated with the direction of south and noon, high noon. Okay. So think about that first, the different directions and times of the different parts of the chart. Now the reason why I had the little yellow smiley face there is that to help you remember this is that if this smiley face was a person or yourself, and you were standing in the southern hemisphere, the only way to see the planets in the zodiac is if you look north. Okay, so that might just be a little memory device for you. Okay. Now that we've oriented ourselves to the chart in the different directions, let's add the planets in. So each planet has a different direction / house / bhava that gives it strength. So in the first house, which again represents east, Mercury and Jupiter are going to gain strength here. The reason being is that you can think about it as Mercury represents education, and Jupiter represents spirituality, like meditation. And it's thought, again, in classical Indian culture, that the best time to study or meditate is in the early morning when the mind is clear and there's less distractions. Okay, so if you see Mercury or Jupiter in the first house of the chart, you can understand that these planets are going to be strong and give strong results. Then we have in the fourth house here, which again represents the north direction, and midnight, we have Moon and Venus. So why does that potentially make sense? Again, this is, some of it is, a lot of this, again, a lot of Jyotish Vedic astrology was developed before there was any technology to see, like telescopes and stuff to see into the sky. So they were all doing this by sight, like what they saw in planets and how they saw the planets change and stuff like that. So just keep that in mind as well. In any case, Moon and Venus are strongest in the 4th house, which again, also symbolizes midnight or the north, because the moon, especially when it's a full moon, is very bright, and it gains attention, it gains strength, it draws your attention when it's a dark night. The other thing about Venus is a very bright planet, very close to the sun. It's moon is a moon, but Venus is usually the brightest planet in the sky. Not always, but usually. So these two we call them all planets, but the moon's technically a moon if you think about modern astronomy. But the moon and Venus are strongest in the 4th house. So again, if you see them in the 4th house in a chart, you can understand that they will give strong results. The thing about this too is that, this is Bala, directional strength is just one thing, one influence on the strength of a planet. There are many, so you're going to have to weigh and sort, let's say the moon is debilitated in Scorpio. So let's say the moon is in the 4th house of a chart, and so it's strong by Bala, but let's say the 4th house is ruled by Scorpio, and the moon is debilitated there. Then you have to excuse me, I didn't catch it. I was trying to catch it before the recording, so you didn't have to hear that. Sorry about that. So you have to weigh the Bala strength that it gains by being in the 4th house with the debilitation that weakens it by being in Scorpio. And usually when we're looking at these things, we don't say it's either strong or it's weak, but we integrate them. So we consider that actually in some ways moon is both weak and strong at the same time, and at the very least we can say it's an exaggerated condition. So the moon's going to, give on both sides probably. So let's get back to the planets here. So Saturn is strongest in the 7th house, and you can think about that as Saturn is the farthest, most distant planet. At least that's used in classical Jyotish, Vedic astrology. And because it's cold and distant, it gets lost in the shuffle when you have all these, the sun is shining at midday, and you have the moon potentially shining at midnight. So it actually gains strength when it's away from the other planets. It can gain a little bit of attention there. So it's strongest in the 7th house. And you can also think about that as, this Saturn is a little bit stronger when it's getting dark. And again, because the west in the 7th house, or the 7th house represents the west, and about 6 p.m. when the sun is setting and it's starting to get dark, then Saturn can pop up a little bit. And then Sun and Mars, they gain strength in the 10th house. So the 10th house is related to the south, but also high noon, which is the hottest time of the day, and the Sun and Mars are the hottest planets. So, okay, so those are the 7 main planets here. I also have Rahu and Ketu in parentheses here, and there's a reason why they're in parentheses. So I was taught when I was learning Jyotish that you don't use directional strength for Rahu and Ketu in the main natal chart, birth chart for somebody. You can, however, use directional strength or Bala when you're analyzing the subzodiacs, or also known as the amshas, so subcharts of the main chart. So Rahu, luckily, it kind of makes sense. Rahu is very Saturn-like. They're both cold, dry, windy planets. And so Rahu also gains directional strength, Bala, in the 7th house, or bhava, again, when you're analyzing the subzodiacs or amshas. And Ketu is very Mars-like. It's a hot, erratic planet, and it gains strength in the 10th house, or 10th bhava. again, in these sub-zodiac astrologies. Okay. So we've established here in this teaching lesson that a chart has directionality to it, east, north, west, south, and their time associations. And because of these direction and time associations, different planets will get stronger when they're in different houses. So again, if you get a chart and you see that the sun is in the 10th house, the sun is strong, and it's going to deliver strong results, both good and bad. So the opposite is true to all this, though. So when a planet is in the opposite direction to the place where it gains directional strength, it gains Bala, it gets weaker. So if Mercury normally gains strength when it's in the first house, that again represents the east, about 6 a.m., Mercury gets a little bit weaker when it's in the 7th house, the opposite house to the first house. Okay, and then like another example, so the moon, if it's strongest in the if the moon is strongest in the 4th house, if you find in a chart that the moon is in the 10th house, the moon gets a little bit weaker. Okay? Okay, so hopefully that was all clear. So that's really the concept of Bala and directional strength, and how you can visualize it, see it, and identify it in a chart. All right, so I hope that was helpful and clear, so that again, if you're looking at charts or you're following along with, some of us astrologers who talk about astrology in these videos and such, like, you'll get more out of it, and you can identify things for yourself as well. Because again, these charts are so complicated. You can't talk about everything in a chart. So you might, on your own, hopefully, start to pick up things and start to just, have more awareness, more knowledge, more skill, and also more intuition about what these planets are pointing to in somebody's chart. Okay? So thank you for your time, and until the next one, namaste.